Mike Kozlik is president of Advantage Resources, Inc., a business services firm based in Birmingham, Alabama, providing customized consulting services to privately owned businesses. Advantage Resources is focused on helping privately owned businesses and their owners grow and succeed by providing a variety of business services. Mike is also the owner of Tab Central Alabama. Mike, if you're ready, I'll hand it on over to you.
Thank you, Alexandra. Good morning, everybody. I'm Mike Kozlik. As Alexandra said, I own and run the franchise, the Tab franchise in Central Alabama. So I want to ask a question to all the business owners on the call. Do you know what the ratio of outbound and marketing to inbound marketing effort is in your business? If you don't, that's okay. Because right now we're going to talk about one technique to help flip the ratio. And if I could figure out how to make the slides move ahead, we'd be great. There we go. So we're going to begin a process to really differentiate you and your business from your competition. So what we're going to talk about is how to synchronize a podcast with your other marketing to gain more inbound business. Now, people listen to podcasts for both entertainment and for information. So you should try to create both elements in every episode you record. This is a dual benefit for the listener and can usually be done with a little levity or a story in addition to the details and factual information you're providing them. So when you design your podcast, you have to give your listeners some valuable morsel of information, a useful and usable takeaway, something they can act on and that will help them improve their business, help them overcome some challenge or issue they're facing, or generally make life easier for them. Today, we're going to work on beginning to differentiate you and your business from all the other box of Cheerios on the shelf. So how I started is one of the main reasons I started my podcast is because my marketing consultant and pretty much most of her staff agreed that I absolutely had a face for radio. That cinched it. So no videos for me, at least not right now. So that's why we went to podcast. So this is one technique we're using in my business to help flip the ratio on outbound marketing versus inbound marketing. So one of the best ways to create an effective and a followed podcast is to use like the TED Talks guide. So your objective in any podcast is to build an idea inside the minds of your audience. So this is how we do it. So step one, limit your talk to just one or two major ideas. Ideas are complex things, and there may be a lot of parts to them. Focus your content on that idea. Explain the one thing thoroughly. Share examples. Have guests that you question and endorse the reality of that idea. Make sure this idea runs through everything you say during the podcast. It's what we call a thread. 2, give your listeners a reason to care. Stir curiosity. Use provocative questions to identify things that need explaining. If you can identify a disconnect in your audience's worldview, they'll feel the need to bridge that knowledge gap. Once you've gotten their interest and piqued their desire, you can start building your idea. That's why I asked you if you knew what your ratio of outbound marketing to inbound marketing efforts was when we started. The third thing, build your idea. Piece by piece, build your podcasts in a series on a subject. Use concepts that your audience already understands and then weave those concepts together so with ideas that already exist in your listener's mind. And don't start with your language. Start where they are and bring them to you. Speakers often forget that the terminology and the concepts they work with are generally foreign and unfamiliar to their audiences. Meet them where they are. Use metaphors and stories to show how the pieces you are describing fit together. Or make your idea worth sharing. start by asking yourself first, who does this idea benefit? If it only serves you or your organization, it's probably not worth sharing. Your listeners will see right through you. That's the problem with a lot of podcasts that are created as revenue streams. Their content is largely too specific or too narrow a niche or group to be generally useful. If you believe your idea has the potential to brighten up someone's day, ease their mind on a challenging issue, or change someone's perspective for the better, or inspire someone to do something differently, then you have the core ingredient for a truly great talk. All right, so how do we do this? First of all, you do not have to be smarter than everybody else. You just need to show you know what you're talking about and that you have the background and experience to show you're good at it. So your topic is important, so don't make it too broad nor too narrow. Break your topic into 4 bite-sized pieces. This breaks down nicely into 1 podcast every week in a month. Create a script or talking points to use in discussing the elements of your topic during each podcast. During the podcast, simply lay out the basics, the 10,000-foot altitude view, and be able to cover it in no more than 6 to 12 minutes. Over 10 to 12 minutes, people lose interest and switch to something else. As an inveterate channel surfer, I can tell you that is true. You don't need to go into super detail. Your aim is just to get them to call you for more information because they see you as the subject matter expert and someone who can help them with their problems. So give enough detail and information so listeners can make sense of what you're saying, see the value, so they can decide they need this stuff and they need you. It's a simple matter to record your talk. Get a good quality recording microphone. I got mine on Amazon. It's a Blue Yeti. It's a USB plug and play. I also downloaded a free audio software called Audacity. It's also what my audio producer uses, and that makes it really easy. And that's all you really need. So experiment over time with different formats. In the beginning, you're giving something of a lecture. Later on, you can include guests who you interview and who can or will reinforce your topic's main points. Best if through some personal example story. I do strongly suggest you find an audio media producer to clean up the recording. They will take out the extraneous stuff, they'll add cool music, and they will usually upload it correctly, I might add, to various podcast sites. I use Buzzsprouts. It's an inexpensive and easy site, and it distributes to a number of other podcast outlets as well. Then you and your marketing specialist begin to create content to promote your podcast and post that content to all your social media platforms with the links to where your podcasts reside. That's it. And next week, rinse and repeat. So now we tell people your marketing effort cannot be a single activity. You must always strive to have 2 or 3 marketing activities running simultaneously. As we tell our clients, when we're helping them build an effective business development process, you have to have more than one iron to fire at a time. Eventually, one of them will get hot enough to brand. What we're trying to do is flip the ratio. We want to change the percentage of outbound to inbound marketing around. So there's an increasing amount of inbound activity, that's business that comes to you, versus you going out to get it. A lot of businesses spend a lot of time and money reaching out to prospects to generate interest. There usually isn't a lot of prospects calling on them out of the blue. That's because prospects don't know they're there, and when they go looking for some product or service, they don't find them. So we want to flip that ratio and get people calling and coming to your business because they are interested in you and you have directly connected them to you. The trick is to leverage various different means to get prospects to both find your business when they're looking and to reach out to you because they've heard about you or they've seen you on a YouTube video. And this is why we synchronize our social media posts to the subject and topic, and then we link them to the podcast. When prospects hear about you, it usually comes from word of mouth, specific referrals by others who know you or your business, or because they've heard you in a podcast or on a YouTube video blog or through one of the social media platforms. What you're looking to do is leverage your social media presence like LinkedIn or Facebook by getting known as the expert through your podcasts. Those podcasts are in turn launched and linked to your other marketing efforts, your social media efforts, and your digital presence, for example, your website. And if your website doesn't have a resources page where you can upload your podcasts or links to them, get one created. You will begin to point your social media posts to that page of your website. When they are there, they are more likely to look at your services and products as well, thereby driving business to your company. Here's how it works. Posts recommend your podcasts and give links to access them. Your podcasts give listeners phone numbers and email addresses for them to reach out directly for more information. And you tell people to go to your website for additional information. And your website should have a contact us button on every page. Everything refers to and supports everything else, all with the intent to get people to call you versus the other way around. All right, so here are some basic takeaways from today's talk about leveraging what you know. First, it's easy and fun to create a podcast. If done well, it will enhance your image in your market for your product and service. Use it to leverage yourself and become the go-to guy or gal in your market as the local expert. When prospects begin to engage you for advice, they are primed for an offer. Everything is aimed at that. And here's one more takeaway. If you're not comfortable in speaking, even if it's just recording, find someone who can do it for you and change the angle of attack. They need to be good at speaking intelligently about your subject, but you will still be providing the words, the scripts, and the talking points. Your spokesman must be constantly setting you up as the go-to guy or gal, the expert in this subject and in that market. They must be endorsing you throughout the presentation to establish your credibility. After that, the strategy is the same. Occasionally, you can do a scripted Q&A with your spokesman who's asking you key predetermined questions designed to show your knowledge and expertise. And this is so listeners can hear you and confirm in their own minds that you are the real deal. So now, given our current situation, today is not the time to be sitting around waiting to get out of national timeout. You need to be doing things to generate leads all day, every day. I use the parable of the farmer. Now is the time for you to be preparing the soil, planting the seeds, and nurturing them so you can have a harvest later this year. I'd like to leave you with some general information. Here's some basic information on me and a link to my podcast so you can hear the effects of the process. I invite you to subscribe to my free podcast, and you can follow me on LinkedIn and Facebook, or you can contact me directly. But the biggest thing I can give you today, if you want to use this technique to supercharge or even turbocharge your current marketing effort, give my marketing consultant, Mitzi, a call. Mitzi Jane Media is the media firm who is both a TAB member and the ARI's marketing support firm. Mitzi Jane Media manages client social media campaigns and does the posting every week on multiple platforms. They also create content over and above other content that is created by TAB, and they produce and engineer the Mike Kozlik Show, our weekly business podcast. You should avail yourself to speaking with Mitzi about what Mitzi Jane Media can do for you and your business in your market. So call her at 205-862-0629 and tell her I sent you. A few minutes on the phone or a cup of coffee can only help. So remember, you're only as far behind as you want to be. So that was pretty record time. So let's open the floor for questions if there are any.
Great. Thank you so much, Mike. I agree 100% with you, especially now getting on the podcast. Starting podcast is so important. I think it's the best time too when you can't leave your house, right?
Well, I have a lot of extra quality time, that's for sure.
Yes. So it does look like we got a couple of questions that came in. The first person asks, how do I create a script that captures listeners' attention?
Well, first start with something that you know very well, something that you're doing in your business. It could be a service that you're providing, or maybe a product, and you want to talk about what that product can do to help your prospective customers. Once you have that idea in mind, just kind of write down some talking points about the important aspects of whatever it is that your product or service that you're trying to position, and things that would be useful. Take it from the perspective of the client. What would they be asking? What would they want to know? And just kind of put yourself together, 10 or 12 or 15 talking points, and then just kind of freely discuss in a chronological or sequential manner how your product works and the benefits it'll provide.
Wonderful. We did get another question that came through. This gentleman is asking, when you first started your podcast, what were the topics you delved into?
That's a great question. What my marketing consultant and I created was a strategy first for how we were going to use this technique to help flip the ratio. So I started with what we do in the alternative board, and we began by talking about the personal vision that every person that owns a business should have. They started their business for a reason, and so we walk them through the process of creating that. We then evolved into the second step, which is the creation of the business vision. Again, using the TAB protocols and the TAB methodology, the business vision is nested in the personal vision. So we walk through all the elements of the business vision, and our strategy is to continue to lay out in what we're calling the Foundation Series, the steps on how a business can create a proper strategy. So I started from the beginning. We have a big thing here about starting with the end in mind, and the end for me is providing businesses with the means to create a path forward that is executable and will be successful. So we start with the very beginning, which is the personal vision, and we're working our way through how a business can create a strategy that will grow their business to whatever the business owner wants.
Wonderful. We did get a couple more questions that came through. This gentleman asks, what are some of the places that you can use to distribute a podcast?
Well, I use Buzzsprouts, and Buzzsprouts has an option in there where it'll distribute to a number of the known podcast sites out there. I don't have it up on my screen right now, so I can't tell you what they are. But if you go to Buzzsprouts, as an example, it's going to ask you where do you want your podcast distributed. Now, that's only half of the coin. The real followership, if you will, comes from promoting whatever episode that you've created through your social media and letting people go to that link and then they can sign up and they can access all your podcasts. They don't have to be using some of the other distribution sites that are out there. But many of the podcast sites that are like Buzzsprouts, for example, have connections and links to many different places that people access podcasts from.
Great. The same gentleman is asking, do you know the pricing of podcasts? How much does it cost to get these started?
Well, they're pretty relatively inexpensive. Buzzsprouts, for example, I think I pay like $12 or $14 a month for that service. Now, it's just an upload and distribution service. It's not very expensive. They all vary based on what they do, and if they also market them, there might be some cost in that. But mine is fairly inexpensive because I'm pretty cheap. So my intent is to get known locally, so we use a lot of social media to promote it, not necessarily anything that's in a podcast or distribution site. So Buzzsprouts is pretty inexpensive overall.
Great. It looks like we have one more question that came through. It is asking, do you have any recommended podcasts other than yours that we should listen to get a good idea of how they work?
Yes, the TED Talks book or podcast talks about how to create podcasts. You can find that on YouTube. I think you put in TED Talks book or guide, and then comma podcast, and it'll take you to that thing. It's good to kind of listen, but remember, TED Talks are very high-end presentations. We kind of want to give a 6 to 12 minute piece of information that's useful and valuable and usable to our targeted audiences. So some of that stuff may not be necessarily applicable, but it's got some good basic foundational ideas. A lot of what I've discussed today came from that, and what my marketing consultant has taught us about how to create these things effectively and how to target your audience and not lose them. I tend to have a opportunity to extend my talking sometimes, and it loses people. But the TED Talks on YouTube is a great place to start.
Great. Thank you so much, Mike, for all that great information. If anybody has any questions that pop up later or weren't able to watch the entire presentation today, I'm going to be sending out an email later today with the recording of the presentation and the slide deck information. It will also have Mike's information and email address on there. Again, Mike, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. You all stay safe and enjoy National Timeout.
All right, everybody, you can check out all of our previous BOSS webinars on demand by visiting our website and clicking on webinars. I hope everyone joins us on April 22nd for Changing Trends in Website Design with tab member Jim Burris. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us today. I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their day.